Hi, and welcome to a brief devotion for Sunday, the 18th of October 2020. We open in prayer using a refrain from a line in Psalm 63. God, on this new day, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, as we focus on you, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, in our desperation to find meaning and hope, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, in our world of turmoil, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, where livelihoods have been destroyed, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, where power has been abused, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, with regards to our deepest troubles, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, as we focus on the Bible reading for today, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. God, as we continue to worship you, let us see how mighty and glorious you are. Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayer. Amen. The Bible reading is from Matthew 22, from verse 15 to verse 22. The question about paying taxes to Caesar. The Pharisees and some Herodians came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, they said, we know that you tell the truth. You teach the truth about God's will for people without worrying what others think, because you pay no attention to anyone's status. I think that means that everyone has sacred worth in God's eyes. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it against our law to pay taxes to the Roman emperor or not? Jesus, however, was aware of their evil plan, and so he said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin for paying the tax. They brought him the coin, and he asked them, whose face and name are these? Caesar's, they answered. So Jesus said to them, well then, pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and pay to God what belongs to God. When they heard this, they were amazed. They left him and went away. May God speak to us today through these words of old. Amen. For my thoughts, I'm deeply indebted to Raj Nadella, Associate Professor of New Testament at Columbia Theological Seminary. Thank you, sir. Two very different groups unite to question Jesus. On the one hand, the Pharisees, a religious group, quietly anti-Rome. On the other hand, Herodians, a political group, followers of Herod, supporters of Rome. They put aside their differences in order to face a common enemy, Jesus. They come to him with a trap question, meant to be a dilemma, whereby he's damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't. They say, is it against our law to pay taxes to the Roman emperor or not? Saying yes would put him at odds with Rome, for it could be interpreted as fueling a rebellion. Saying no would put him at odds with the people who struggle under the huge tax burden, which is used by Rome not only to raise revenue, but in fact as a means to subjugate people and keep them in line. In the face of this trap, Jesus springs a trap of his own. With the help of a coin, he turns the tables on his challengers. Caesar's image is on the coin. They are to pay to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. I love the irony in how quickly they're able to produce that coin, which just proves that they quite happily participate in Caesar's economy and probably do so prosperously. But the point Jesus wants to make and goes on to make is that what is legal, especially as far as Rome is concerned, i.e. paying the tax, is not necessarily moral, i.e. what is right, especially as far as God is concerned. Everyone is legally obligated to live with Caesar, But at the same time, they can take up the invitation to live for God. While living with Caesar, they're invited to live for God. And as Warren Carter noted, an imperial tax can be paid without the payment being a vote of support for Rome. Paying taxes acknowledges Rome's political power, but not its moral authority to rule. That moral authority belongs to God. In fact, the heavy-handed and self-serving way Rome rules undermines any claim it has on moral authority. Hence, even as one pays taxes to Caesar, one should go on to pay to God what is due God. Now, what currency would that take? Surely the currency of God's kingdom is very different to Caesar's currency. The currency Caesar uses is made up of things like heavy taxes, autocratic control, command councils, and the constant threat of violence by way of their army. The currency God uses is quite the opposite. If the Beatitudes are anything to go by, anything that brings wholeness, transforming, and healing to communities is a form of resistance to the imperial ways, to the ways of empire. So the currency required of disciples means doing things that bring healing and transformation to communities, all communities, not just communities that look like us, and not at the expense of any other community. All communities, because all have sacred worth in the eyes of God. And it is my firm belief that if we follow Jesus, we can never be on the side of Caesar. For when we are with Caesar, we lose our prophetic credibility. Is that not what happened to a church under apartheid? And is that not the risk our church runs today? We need to guard against ways in which we endorse Caesar. It makes us complicit in Caesar's failures. It might be worth remembering that people who abuse positions of power and who abuse position and power for self-gain at the expense of others are not only found in government. They are found in any situation, in any organization, social clubs, community leadership, corporate, church, out church, families. And so if we want to be true to Christ, we can't legitimize abuse of position and power by anyone. And we need to ask ourselves some difficult questions. Questions like, how do we as Christians negotiate political spaces tactfully without legitimizing the abuse of position or power? What are we to do in those situations? How do we remain hopeful and committed to God's kingdom in the face of a growing impunity? Boy, isn't that true in South Africa today? What are the mechanisms we need to put in place in order to transform the current reality and bring about a different reality that would be more acceptable to God? How can we bring about God's kingdom? Isn't that something far more worth living for than what we see happening today? I propose that we close with the covenant prayer because it puts us firmly on God's side. Lord, I am no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Rank me with whom you will. Put me to doing, put me to suffering. Let me be employed for you or laid aside for you, exalted for you or brought low for you. Let me be full, let me be empty. Let me have all things, let me have nothing. And the covenant now made on earth, let it be ratified in heaven. I freely and wholeheartedly yield all things to your pleasure and disposal.